Well, President Trump's new tariffs against dozens of countries include some key US allies and trading partners. Japan and South Korea will face 25% tariffs if new deals are not reached by next month. On Monday, Trump posted a flurry of letters to world leaders on social media, warning of what's to come. New tariffs have a big impact on America's small business owners and consumers. The owner of a Japanese restaurant in Denver, Colorado, spoke to CNN about how Washington's trade policies affect industries like his.
The approach of the administration is it's a game of chicken or rock, paper, scissors. But the impact that has on us as small businesses, it feels like Russian roulette. And we're just waiting for the next pull of the trigger and for it to be the last one for all of us to shut our doors. So it's a hard time right now.
Justin Wolfers is a professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan and a non-resident senior fellow with the Brookings Institution. He joins me now from Truro in Massachusetts. Good to have you with us.
Likewise, Rosemary.
So after previously saying he would not extend the pause on his tariff deadline, President Trump did just that on Monday, extending it to August 1st instead of this coming Wednesday, and also threatening new punishing tariffs for those countries that fail to make a deal. What's your response to all of this?
Well, there's two ways of seeing today's news. One is what you led with, which is the new July 7th. That was when the deadline was and everything was meant to be sorted out. All of a sudden became August 1st. So to use the language folks have been using, that might lead you to say that's a Taco Tuesday. Taco, Trump always chickens out, and he's just going to keep pushing this back. I'm not so convinced that's what happened. I actually think what happened today might be called instead Tariff Tuesday. See, Trump actually sent out 14 letters today to 14 countries outlining the tariffs that he intends to charge them. Those tariffs actually were remarkably similar to what he charged listed back on Liberation Day. In fact, they're the exact same number, plus or minus a couple of percentage points. It's like a gremlin got into their Excel spreadsheet or something. So what he's signaling there is if he doesn't keep pushing this out, he really is serious about announcing the sort of punitive, destructive and incoherent tariffs that caused markets to melt down all the way back to Liberation Day. The question he hasn't answered is, he put forward those tariffs, markets melted down, he backed off because he got convinced they're a bad idea. So what has he done? He took a 90-day pause and he's going to put them back on. And the question that remains unanswered is, why do you think it's going to work this time, mate?
So President Trump sent out those letters to 14 US trading partners you mentioned, threatening new tariff rates of up to 40% if a deal isn't reached. And he shared those letters on social media. What's your view of his negotiating tactics with Japan, South Korea and other nations that received these letters?
Mate, what a wonderful word to call it, negotiation. I know, sometimes my partner and I have had a few struggles in our relationship, and what we do is we sit down and we talk it out, and we explore ways in which I can make her feel better and she can make me feel better. And what we try and do as a couple is find ways we can enrich each other's lives and work better together than we could apart. And you might be wondering why I'm talking so much about my relationship. It's because trade relationships are very much like human relationships. The idea with trade is to figure out, hey, what can I do for you that would make your life better? And in return, what could you do for me that would make my life better? But the important point in there is there's got to be a conversation. There's got to be more than one person in a room. And to call a letter a deal, I mean, I guess the United Postal Service, my postman came by today and he dropped off a deal from the electricity company. But it wasn't much of a deal because it just tells me exactly what I have to pay. It's not a negotiation and no one's trying to make my life any richer at all.
And of course, so far, the Trump administration has made a trade deal with the UK and tentative deals with China and Vietnam. The EU could strike a deal in principle by Wednesday's deadline or previous deadline, and Canada could reach a deal by July 21st. But the Trump administration's original goal of 90 deals in 90 days will not be achieved. So what was happening during this 3-month pause and why weren't more deals made?
Yeah, so in fact, Rosemary, I think you're a very generous grader. There's a framework. So we had 90 days. We got a framework with Britain. We have a framework with Vietnam. What happened with China is not anything that makes life better than it was before Trump. It's that there was a de-escalation from some of the worst excesses of Trump's retaliation against China. You mentioned Canada. Yes, we actually have a deal with Canada. It's called the US-Canada Free Trade Agreement, USMCA. One of the letters he sent out today was to Korea, imposing a 25% tariff on Korea. You know, someone in the White House should have reminded him we already have a deal with Korea. It's called the Korea-US Free Trade Agreement. And you might imagine, given the title of that agreement, it's actually a free trade agreement. There's nothing for Korea to give up. They already let us sell almost whatever we want into Korea at a zero tariff rate. So the language around this has nothing to do with reality whatsoever. There's been no deal making. And the reason there's no deal making is, why would I give up something to get your signature on a piece of paper if your word isn't worth anything? And that's what Trump keeps showing himself to be. His word's not really worth much at all.
And Justin, as you mentioned, Wall Street didn't respond well to President Trump's comments and actions on Monday. What are the markets hoping to see in the hours and days ahead, and how will Main Street likely respond to this?
Yes. So on Wall Street, I actually thought it was a relatively muted response. It was very negative. Markets didn't like it. But I think in the back of their mind, they're convinced that this is Taco Trump. Again, remember, this is the idea that Trump always chickens out. So if the guy announces something and they think there's an 80% chance that he's going to chicken out, then they should respond as if there's an 80% chance he didn't announce anything, which would be why markets move so little in response. So if it turns out he's going to stand by this, then I think you should expect Wall Street to look very, very unhappy and to see a lot of red ink over the next few days. If they're right that he does chicken out, then maybe that'll help lead to something of a boost. And as for Main Street, some people have been out there saying, you know, we haven't seen prices go up yet. But the thing to remember is we're still in the middle of a pause. We're not getting those punitively high tariffs yet. And in fact, we've extended the pause out to August 1st. So, given that, the worst excesses of the tariffs haven't even been imposed for a single day yet. They keep being paused and then repaused. And so it's going to take some time before we see this in our everyday cost of living.
The so-called reciprocal tariffs were supposed to take effect tomorrow after the 90-day pause announced back in April. The president calls the August deadline firm, but not 100% firm, which I am fairly certain makes them not firm. He fired off a wave of letters warning of new higher rates if no deals are reached. U.S. stocks closed lower after the announcement, with all three major averages posting their worst day in about 3 weeks. Futures right now basically flat before the open. With us now, CNN political commentator, Democratic strategist Paul Begala, and Maura Gillespie, founder and principal of Blue Stack Strategies. And Maura, I want to put these 3 dates up on the screen so people can see them. April 9th, July 9th, and August 1st. The visual helps here. August 1st, there's one thing I know about August 1st, is that it's not July 9th or April 9th. So, what do voters think when they see this deadline continuing to move?
He's got a semblance of a plan, is what I first thought of. I think that this is going to be concerning for the president, but also mostly for the members of Congress, because August recess, they go home to their constituents and they have to explain why his plan didn't work and why it's not working as far as this 90 deals in 90 days, and what happens if these 25%, 40% tariff increases actually take place. You mentioned the markets are, took a bit of a dip or flat. Global markets really weren't impacted because I think that they saw that as not firm, and that there is wiggle room with the president, that he will push this off again and again. I think that this is a messaging challenge for Republicans going into August, between the mega bill, the one big beautiful bill, and then these tariffs decisions by the president. They need to explain to their constituents what the impact will be and why they're still supporting the president.
Paul, a little deep tease here. Harry Atten's going to be on a little bit talking about how polling shows the president's tariff policy is very, very unpopular, remains unpopular, not getting more popular here. So when you look at this, what do you think the lasting impact here is? Because it's been a drag on his overall economic numbers.
Well, it has, John. It goes right to the heart of why he got elected. Immigration played a role, but it's not even close. Cost of living is what drove the Trump election. That's why he became president. His most important mission politically, I think also economically, cut the cost of groceries, gas, and rent, right? Stuff costs too much. Tariffs are taxes that American people and American companies pay. It's a new tax. And this one now, Mara makes a good point I'd forgotten. I used to work on the Hill a million years ago, but you're right. The August recess really matters, Mara. But so does back to school shopping, right? All the moms and dads, right when this hits in August, they're going to be going back to school, and paying more money for less stuff makes you really unpopular. Add to that this big ugly bill that's going to add $3 trillion to the rent, to the debt. That's going to increase interest rates. It's going to cost all of us a whole lot more money. And then the cuts on things like our health care, veterans assistance. So the cost of living is going to go up and up and up, which is exactly what Trump doesn't need politically. It's what America doesn't need economically. It makes no sense whatsoever.